My whole life was a lie. We were never who we said we were.
I'm sitting in my home office right now, staring at a framed newspaper clipping from October 1983, and I still can't fully process that this is actually my life. 6 months ago, I was a broke mechanic whose wife had just moved to France with our kids, sleeping in my dead mother's house because I literally couldn't afford rent anywhere else. Today, my children are asleep upstairs in a home I never imagined owning. And I have a biological father I didn't know existed until a few months ago, who happens to be worth $250 million. Let me back up and tell this from the beginning, because the whole thing is absolutely insane. My name is Marcus. I'm 43 years old, and until this past spring, I owned Foster Auto Repair in Duluth, Minnesota. I'd bought the shop 18 years ago with life insurance money after my dad Robert died. He was a plumber who never missed one of my Little League games, who taught me that working with your hands and being honest was the most important thing in the world. He died fixing someone's kitchen sink. Heart attack at 52. Just dropped dead while tightening a valve. The shop had been my dream. I specialized in classic cars, initially because that was my passion. Old Mustangs, Camaros, Corvettes. But when the economy tanked, those customers completely disappeared. I switched to regular repairs to survive. But I couldn't compete with chain shops that could undercut my prices on everything. Then the final blow came when a customer sued me over a transmission job, claiming I'd destroyed his engine, even though I absolutely hadn't. My insurance covered the settlement, but immediately dropped my coverage afterward. Without insurance, I couldn't legally operate. So that was it. Done. I filed for bankruptcy and watched everything I'd built for nearly 2 decades just crumble. My marriage was already dying by that point anyway. My wife Sarah had been taking French lessons for 2 years, telling me it was required for her job at some import company. Her boss, Laurent Moreau, was just a name I'd see on her phone screen, someone who apparently needed her input at odd hours. I was too busy trying to keep the failing shop running to notice all the obvious signs. The new, expensive clothes she claimed were for company presentations. The weekend business trips to Chicago that somehow left her energized instead of exhausted. The way she stopped asking about my day entirely and started complaining constantly that I smelled like motor oil, that our house was too small, that the kids deserved better than this life. One morning in early spring, she just told me flat out she was leaving, said Laurent had offered her a position at his company's office in Lyon, and she was taking our kids with her. Emma was 12, this talented artist who used to leave drawings under my pillow before bed. Tyler was 10, obsessed with fixing things, just like his dad, always in the garage, asking me to teach him about engines. Sarah said they deserved better than our modest Rambler house and a father who was always covered in grease and going bankrupt. I argued that this was their home, that you can't just take someone's children to another country. But she absolutely could, and she did. International custody law is basically designed to destroy the parent who gets left behind. My lawyer was this exhausted guy named Patterson who worked out of a strip mall office. He was brutally honest with me from day one. He said without significant funds, I had essentially zero chance of fighting this. Sarah was their mother with a stable, well-paying job overseas. French courts would heavily favor keeping children with the primary caregiver who could provide stability. Meanwhile, I was a bankrupt mechanic who just lost his business and filed for bankruptcy. That's exactly how they'd see it, he said. I was sorry, but those were the facts. The kids video called me when they could, but the connection was always terrible, freezing every few seconds because of the weak Wi-Fi in Laurent's apartment. Emma would ask when I was coming to visit, and I'd tell her I was working on it. Not mentioning that international custody lawyers wanted $50,000 just to review my case. I sold everything that wasn't nailed down, trying to scrape together money. My truck, my tools, Robert's old workshop equipment. It wasn't even close to enough. I felt completely powerless. Then, Mom died. The cancer took her fast once it really started, maybe 3 months total. I'd been staying at her house during her final weeks, and after she passed, I just stayed there because I had absolutely nowhere else to go. The realtor walked through the place with her tablet, calculating square footage and market value, like she was measuring a corpse. She said, with the original hardwood floors and decent bones, I could probably get around $280,000 for it. Maybe more if we staged it right. That money represented my only possible chance of funding a custody fight, if I was incredibly lucky. Mom had raised me mostly on her own after Robert died when I was 25. She'd always told me she moved to Duluth from somewhere in Canada back in the early 80s, that her parents had died young, and she had no siblings, except for this one cousin, Carol, out in Arizona, who we'd visited exactly twice during my entire childhood. She was intensely private about anything before Duluth. I'd noticed growing up that we had no family photos from before 1984, no references to her life before Minnesota, but I'd never really questioned it. She was just Mom, you know? Private and careful about certain things, but loving. Cleaning out that house after she died was absolutely brutal. Every single room held ghosts. The dining room, where we'd celebrated every single Thanksgiving. Mom always cooking enough food for 20 people, even when it was just the three of us. The kitchen, where Robert had taught me to fix a leaky faucet when I was 7, his huge hands guiding my small ones while he said everything can be fixed if you have patience and the right tools. The basement workshop where he'd spent countless hours teaching me about plumbing and basic repairs. My cousin Kevin came up to help me pack. He's technically Robert's nephew, but we'd always considered each other close family. He brought a case of beer and mostly stood around drinking it, while making unhelpful commentary about how creepy the house had always seemed to him as a kid. How Mom kept everything so perfect, like she was afraid of leaving any trace of herself anywhere. I remember thinking that was a weird observation at the time, but not understanding what he meant. On the third day of clearing things out, I was up in the attic alone. Kevin was downstairs supposedly packing the kitchen, but probably just drinking his way through the beer. The attic had always been Mom's domain, even when I was a kid. I needed explicit permission to go up there. She kept it organized with an intensity that honestly bordered on obsession. Christmas decorations in one corner, all labeled by specific year. Tax documents in filing boxes, going back to 1984. Nothing earlier, though, I noticed. Nothing at all from before her life as Margaret Foster began. I was moving this heavy stack of old National Geographic magazines when my foot suddenly went straight through a loose floorboard. Same exact spot where 8-year-old me used to hide baseball cards and candy I'd stolen from the kitchen. But when I knelt down to check the damage, my fingers found something that absolutely should not have been there, wedged between the floor joists. An envelope, brown and brittle with age, sealed with what looked like enough tape to survive a nuclear blast. I called down to Kevin, asking about some old dishes, but my attention was completely fixed on this envelope. Inside was a newspaper clipping, so old it was brittle as dried leaves. Minneapolis Tribune, October 15, 1983. The headline hit me like an actual physical blow to the chest. Prominent businessman's family vanishes. Subjected, the black and white photo showed a young woman holding a toddler. The woman looked exactly like my mother, just 20 years younger, maybe late 20s. The child could have been any 2-year-old, but the caption removed absolutely all doubt. Catherine Bennett and son Marcus, missing since October 12th. My hands were physically shaking as I forced myself to read the article. Gregory Bennett, owner of Bennett Development Group, had returned home from a business trip to find his wife and son completely gone. No note, no warning, no signs of any struggle whatsoever. Just total absence. Police suspected kidnapping. Bennett was offering a $100,000 reward, desperate for any information at all. This can't be right, I said out loud to the empty attic. But underneath the clipping was more proof. A birth certificate with an official government seal. Marcus James Bennett, born May 3, 1981, Hennepin County, Minnesota. Parents listed as Gregory William Bennett and Catherine Rose Bennett. My real birth certificate, the one I'd used my entire life for everything, said Marcus James Foster, born May 3, 1981, in Toronto, Canada. Parents listed as Robert and Margaret Foster. One of these documents was a complete lie, and I knew exactly which one. I called Kevin upstairs. He climbed the attic stairs with the reluctance of a man who thinks he's about to be asked to move something heavy. But when he saw my face, he immediately stopped complaining. I handed him the clipping and watched his eyes go wide as he read it. Looked at the photo. Looked back at me. "This is completely insane," he said. "This woman looks exactly like Aunt Margaret." "Because it is her," I told him. "That's my mother, and that's me." We both just stood there for a moment processing. "But that would mean Robert wasn't your biological father," Kevin said slowly, and the words hung in the air like an accusation. Robert Foster. The man who taught me to fish on Lake Superior, who cheered louder than anyone at every single Little League game, who worked overtime constantly to help pay for my community college. He wasn't my biological father. He was someone my mother had found after running, someone willing to play the part. "There has to be some kind of explanation," Kevin said. "Your mom wouldn't just kidnap you from your real father. There has to be more to it." But what other explanation could there possibly be? The dates lined up perfectly. The names matched exactly. My mother had been Catherine Bennett, married to a wealthy businessman. Then something happened on October 12th, 1983, that made her run. She took me, changed both our names, and built a completely new life 3 hours north in Duluth. Kevin pulled out his phone and started searching. Within maybe 5 minutes, his jaw dropped. "Holy heck, Marcus. Gregory Bennett is worth $240 million. His company built like half of downtown Minneapolis. This says he never remarried after his family disappeared. Never had other children. He's your biological father." Over the next 3 days, I became completely obsessed with researching Gregory Bennett online. I moved my laptop up to the attic and basically lived there surrounded by boxes of evidence of Mom's carefully constructed lie. Kevin eventually went home, but made me promise to eat something besides coffee and stale crackers. The internet revealed that this man was an absolute legend in Minneapolis real estate development. He'd started with a single apartment building in 1978, somehow leveraged that into 2 buildings, then 4, then eventually an entire empire. By the time his family disappeared in 1983, he already owned 30 properties. Now at 76, his company had luxury residential towers, major shopping centers, and office complexes all across the Midwest. His face stared back at me from dozens of Forbes articles and charity gala photos. Silver hair, sharp jawline, and these intense eyes that looked disturbingly similar to mine. Self-made billionaire Gregory Bennett donates $10 million to Children's Hospital. That headline was from just last year. The article mentioned he'd never remarried after losing his family in 1983. Never had other children. The reporter had asked why he focused so heavily on children's charities. His answer made my chest feel tight. Every child deserves to be found. Prosecute. He'd never stopped looking for me. Not once in 40 years. I picked up my phone 17 times before I finally worked up the nerve to call Aunt Carol in Phoenix. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice warm with Arizona sunshine. "Marcus, honey, how's the house cleaning going?" "Carol, I need you to tell me the absolute truth about Mom." There was immediate silence on the line. I could hear her breathing, calculating. "What truth, honey?" "I found the newspaper clipping from 1983. I know she was Catherine Bennett. I know she took me from my biological father, and we've been living under fake names my entire life." The silence stretched even longer this time. When she finally spoke, her voice had aged about 10 years. "She made me promise to never tell you. Made me swear on everything. Misery. She's gone, Carol, and I'm about to lose my own kids to France because I can't afford to fight for them. I need to know who I really am, and why she did what she did." In prison, I heard her sink heavily into a chair, the squeak of old springs. It was October 1983. I was living in Tucson then, working night shifts at the hospital. Around 3 in the morning, someone's just pounding on my door like crazy. I thought someone had died, but it was your mother. Except she was Catherine back then, not Margaret. She was holding you, and you were both completely soaking wet from rain. You were crying, clinging to her. She was shaking worse than I've ever seen anyone shake in my life. Expelled. What did she say? She was absolutely terrified, Marcus. She had bruises all up and down her arms, around her neck. She said she had to disappear completely, that you weren't safe, that she needed my help desperately. Was it Gregory? Did he hurt her? She wouldn't even say his name, just kept repeating over and over, "He'll find us. He'll never stop looking." I wanted to call the police immediately, but she begged me not to. Actually got down on her knees and begged. Said the police couldn't protect her from him, that calling them would make everything worse. So, you helped her disappear. Rinse. Friend who worked in government services, who owed me a significant favor. We created Margaret Foster from scratch. Supposedly my cousin from Canada, who needed a fresh start after a toxic relationship. Your mom cut and dyed her hair, learned to change how she talked, practiced speaking differently. She was honestly brilliant at becoming someone completely else, like she'd been preparing for it her entire life. And what about Robert? Robert was honestly a gift from God, Carol said softly. He'd just moved to Duluth from Wisconsin, didn't know a single person in town. Met your mom at a church potluck about 6 months after she arrived. He fell in love with her basically instantly. She told him the complete truth before they got married, explained she was running from something dangerous and living under a false identity. She said she'd absolutely understand if he wanted to walk away. But he didn't even hesitate. He said he didn't care what name she used or where she came from, as long as she let him love her and love you. And he raised me knowing I wasn't biologically his. He was your real father, Marcus, in every single way that actually mattered. He chose you. That means something. I need to meet Gregory, I told her. Honey, no. Your mother ran for a very specific reason. Whatever that reason was, it was serious enough that she gave up everything. My kids are gone, Carol. Their mother took them to another country with another man. I can't fight for them because I don't have any money. But Gregory Bennett has money. He has serious power and connections. Maybe family actually means something after 40 years. Maybe he'll help me. Or maybe you'll find out exactly why your mother was so terrified. After we hung up, I just sat there staring at Gregory Bennett's corporate website for probably an hour. There was a contact number listed, a general email. It would be so easy to reach out. But what would I even say? I drafted about 20 different emails and deleted every single one of them. Finally, I just picked up the phone and called the main company number. A professional-sounding receptionist answered. Bennett Development Group, how may I direct your call? I need to speak with Gregory Bennett. It's about a personal matter. Manslaughter. Mr. Bennett doesn't take unsolicited personal calls, sir. Would you like to speak with his assistant instead? Relieve him it's about October 12th, 1983. Tell him Marcus is calling. There was a pause then. One moment, please. Murdering music was classical, expensive sounding. My heart was hammering so hard against my ribs, I thought I might actually pass out. This was completely insane. I should just hang up right now. I should forget everything and just accept my life as it was. Then a voice came on the line, deep and controlled, but with this undertone of something raw and barely contained. This is Gregory Bennett. Is this really you? My name is Marcus. I was born May 3, 1981. My mother was Catherine. I heard a sharp intake of breath, then barely a whisper. My God, after all these years, where are you? Are you safe? Is your mother with you? She died 6 months ago. Cancer. I just found out the truth 3 days ago while cleaning out her house. We need to meet. Yes, absolutely yes. Can you come today, right now? I'll send a car, a plane, whatever you need. Tense, the desperation in his voice was absolutely real. 40 years of searching compressed into a single moment. I can drive to Minneapolis. Give me about 3 hours. I'll be waiting. Marcus, I never stopped looking for you. Never once in 40 years. The Bennett Development Group building pierces the Minneapolis skyline like a massive glass and steel declaration of success. 42 floors of pure ambition. The elevator ride up felt like ascending to some kind of final judgment. each floor number counting up toward a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. His assistant, Margaret, met me right at the elevator. "Mr. Foster, Mr. Bennett is waiting in his private office." She didn't correct herself when I didn't dispute the name. We walked through a reception area that could have literally swallowed my entire childhood house, past conference rooms with floor-to-ceiling windows and views that stretched all the way to the horizon. Everything whispered money and power and permanence. Everything my mother had apparently run from. The doors to his office opened, and there he was, Gregory Bennett, 76 years old, standing behind this absolutely massive oak desk. He was noticeably thinner than his photo suggested, his expensive suit hanging somewhat loose on a frame that had probably been much more powerful once. But his eyes were sharp and intensely alive, and when they met mine, they immediately filled with tears. "My God," he whispered, "you look just like her, just like Catherine when I first met her." We stood there frozen for what felt like forever, 40 years of separation crystallizing in the space between us. Then he moved around the desk, his steps careful and uncertain, like he was genuinely afraid I might disappear completely if he moved too fast. "Please, sit. Can I get you anything? Water, coffee? I don't know what you drink. I don't know anything about you." The pain in that admission was raw and real. I sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than my old truck, while he took the one directly across from me. Not the power position behind his desk. He wanted to be close, to see me clearly, to confirm I was actually real. "Before you say anything," I started, "I need you to know I just found out about all this. My mother died 6 months ago, and I was cleaning out her house when I found the newspaper clipping about your family disappearing, about us disappearing." His hands were trembling as he reached for a folder on the side table. "I hired 12 different private investigators over 40 years. Spent over $3 million total. Every single lead went absolutely nowhere. It was like you both became actual ghosts. We became different people. Margaret and Marcus Foster. She married a plumber named Robert when I was 4 years old. He raised me my entire life. I thought he was my biological father until 3 days ago." "A plumber," he said. Not with judgment, just processing the information. "Was she happy? Were you safe?" Relinquit. "Yes, we had a good life. Simple, but good." Jang, then, why? The question came out broken. Why did she run? What did I do that was so terrible she had to completely erase us from existence? I watched his face carefully. "You really don't know?" I've literally tortured myself with that question for 40 years straight. We had arguments sometimes, sure. I worked way too much, traveled constantly for business. But I loved her. I loved both of you with everything I had. I would never, ever have hurt either of you, across to me. 15 years ago, I hired a completely different kind of investigator. Not to find you anymore, but to try to understand why you'd left in the first place. This is what he found. I opened the folder. Police reports from Chicago dated 1979. A woman named Linda Carter filing a restraining order against someone named Richard Cray. Photos of nasty bruises on her arms. Hospital records documenting injuries. "Richard Cray was my business partner," Gregory continued, his voice steady but cold. "He ran the entire financial side while I handled development and construction. I trusted him completely. Way too completely. Repaint, more documents. Multiple complaints from female employees about inappropriate behavior and harassment. All settled quietly with money. Papers signed, silence purchased." The investigator found a very clear pattern. Richard had this obsession with women who were connected to his business partners. It was all about power and control for him, taking what belonged to someone else. Gregory's jaw visibly clenched. Your mother was beautiful, kind, everything Richard wasn't. When she rejected his advances, he escalated the situation. She tried to tell me. She really tried. She said Richard made her uncomfortable, that he showed up at the house when I was traveling, that he watched her. And I told her Richard was just socially awkward, that he was harmless. I was so focused on building this empire that I couldn't see the actual monster working right there in my own office. A new document. A police report from October 11th, 1983, the day before Mom ran. She called the police that specific night, Gregory said. Richard had come to the house while I was away in Tokyo for business. He tried to force his way inside. She locked herself and you in the bathroom. When police finally arrived, Richard was already gone. He had powerful connections and made the report disappear from official records completely. But my investigator managed to find the responding officer's personal notes years later. He thought you were part of it, I said slowly. Or at the very least that you couldn't protect her even with all your money and power, that Richard would find a way no matter what. So she ran to where no amount of money could possibly follow. She became someone else entirely and just disappeared. Where's Richard now? Dead. Car accident in 1992. He never knew I'd discovered the truth. Never paid for what he stole from us. The office felt smaller suddenly. 40 years of complete loss compressed into one room. This man sitting across from me wasn't the monster my mother had fled from. He was just another victim, left behind to wonder what he'd done wrong for 4 entire decades. Your mother was incredibly brave, he said finally. Braver than I ever was. She gave up absolutely everything to keep you safe. Gregory leaned forward. Marcus, I know I can't possibly make up for 40 years, but you're here now. You're my son, my only family. And from what Margaret tells me, you desperately need help with your own children. The next 6 months were completely surreal. Gregory hired legal teams in 3 different countries. They built a custody case that was absolutely bulletproof. Turns out Laurent Moreau wasn't even close to the successful executive he'd pretended to be. Gregory's investigators uncovered active fraud charges in Belgium, serious tax evasion in Switzerland, and a trail of broken marriages scattered across Europe. The man who'd stolen my family was nothing but a con artist in expensive clothes. The French tribunal hearing was all marble and history, justice wrapped in formal European tradition. Gregory sat in the gallery, and his presence alone commanded attention, without him saying a single word. His 5-lawyer team presented documentation that left no room for argument. Sarah looked smaller than I remembered, sitting next to Laurent, who kept nervously tugging at his collar like it was physically choking him. When the judge finally granted me full custody, Emma literally broke free from the social worker and ran straight to me. Her arms wrapped tight around my waist, and she said, "Papa," loud enough that it echoed through the entire courthouse. Tyler followed right behind her, trying to look tough at 10 years old, but completely failing when tears started rolling down his cheeks. They both said they'd missed me desperately. Emma added that Laurent had been mean to them, that he yelled at Sarah constantly, and she cried every single night. I looked over at Sarah, who was just staring at the floor. She'd gambled everything she had on a fantasy and lost it all completely. Laurent was already walking away, literally abandoning her alone in a foreign country with absolutely nothing. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction or vindication, but honestly, all I felt was sad for the woman who'd once been my wife, who'd chosen escape over trying to repair what we had. The flight home was on Gregory's company jet. He'd insisted, saying his grandchildren deserved comfort after everything they'd been through. Emma and Tyler explored the plane with pure wonder, completely unable to believe their grandfather had a private jet and buildings with his name on them across multiple states. "Grandpa Gregory," Emma said, testing out the words. "That sounds kind of weird. We already had a Grandpa Robert." "You did," Gregory replied gently. "And from everything your father has told me, he was a wonderful grandfather. I'm not trying to replace him at all. I'm just hoping you'll let me love you too." Ankles back in Minneapolis, Gregory had already bought us a house 3 blocks from his penthouse. A beautiful colonial that reminded me of the Duluth house, but with touches and updates I never could have afforded in my entire life. "It's yours," he said simply. "Close enough for Sunday dinners. Far enough that you have your own life." He said he offered to simply give me enough money to set me up comfortably for life. I refused. I told him I needed to earn my own way. That's what Robert had taught me, that honest work mattered. That's exactly what Catherine would have said, he replied, and I saw genuine pride in his eyes. Instead, he helped me buy a small chain of luxury auto shops specializing in high-end classic car restorations. Turns out, there's serious money in classic cars after all, if you know the right clientele. Gregory's extensive connections brought me more business than I could handle within 3 months. I kept Mom's house in Duluth. I couldn't bring myself to sell it after finally understanding what it represented. Her sanctuary. The place where she'd felt safe enough to actually raise me. Some weekends I drive up there alone and sit in that attic where everything changed. I've found more documents hidden throughout the house. Love letters from Robert to Margaret, promising to protect her secret forever. Photos of birthday parties and Christmas mornings. Evidence of a family built on a necessary lie that became profound truth. Emma's been painting again, setting up an easel in Gregory's office, where she can watch the entire city while creating. Her latest project is a portrait of our whole family. Me, her, Tyler, and Grandpa Gregory. But in the background, she painted shadows of 2 other figures. When I asked who they were, she said matter-of-factly, "Grandpa Robert and Grandma Margaret. They're still part of our family, even if they're gone. Just like how you were still part of Grandpa Gregory's family, even when you were gone." Kids understand things that adults make unnecessarily complicated. Gregory and I have dinner together every Tuesday evening, just the 2 of us. He tells me about the years of searching, the countless false leads, the nights he stood in what had been my nursery, wondering if I was even alive somewhere. I tell him about growing up in Duluth, about Robert teaching me to fish on Lake Superior, about Mom's constant anxiety and her fear of unexpected knocks at the door, even decades later. I said once that she never stopped being afraid. Gregory replied quietly that she probably didn't know Richard had died, that she likely thought he was still out there somewhere, waiting and watching. That newspaper clipping that changed everything now sits framed in my home office, next to a photo of Mom and Robert on their wedding day, and another of Gregory and Catherine before I was born. All these pieces of fractured history finally fitting together into something that makes sense. My mother made an impossible choice, giving up wealth and comfort for safety and peace. She found love again with a simple plumber who asked no questions and gave everything he had. She raised me in a small Minnesota town where the biggest real danger was icy winter roads. Gregory made his own journey, from abandoned husband to tireless searcher to devoted grandfather. His money brought my children home, but it's his genuine patience and love that makes them call him Grandpa with real affection. I've learned that family isn't just about family or legal paperwork. It's about who actually shows up, who stays, who fights for you when everything falls apart. Robert was my father. Gregory is my father. Both truths exist simultaneously. Just like my mother being both Margaret and Catherine, both the kidnapper and the protector. Sometimes the truth isn't simple or clean. Sometimes love requires running away. Sometimes it requires searching endlessly. And sometimes, 40 years later, it requires forgiveness, for choices made in fear, for dangers unseen, for lives that could have been completely different. My children are home now. They have a grandfather who adores them, a father who fought across an ocean to get them back, and stories of grandparents they'll never meet, but who shaped everything they have. The truth, complicated and messy and real. That's all any of us can give our children. The truth eventually, when they're ready to hear it. And the promise that no matter how far they drift or how lost they become, someone will always be searching for them, waiting for them to come home.